Serafina's Poviv. Alina stepped fully from the trees, and the world sharpened around her as though the forest itself bowed in reverence. She was the most breathtaking creature I had ever seen. Her coat shimmered like liquid silver, every strand capturing light as she moved, almost iridescent. On her forehead, right between her eyes, a narrow golden mark glowed softly. It wasn't a symbol I recognized, a sigil perhaps, or a blessing, or a scar. My breath caught in my chest, painfully tight. "You're here." A half gasp, half sob tore out of me. "You're real." Her ears twitched. "I've always been real, Sarah. You never needed eyes to see me." Then she padded forward, slow and reverent, until she stood directly in front of me. She was massive, only slightly smaller than Ashar and way more graceful. There was power in her size, yes, but more in her presence, an unspoken certainty that she belonged here, that she belonged to me. I fell to my knees like a worshiper before their deity. My hands reached out before I even realized I'd moved. The moment my palms sank into her fur, I almost collapsed entirely. It was softer than anything I'd ever touched, lush, warm, impossibly comforting. Heat seeped into my fingertips, crawling up my arms, encasing my chest. A sob tore out of me, raw and unbidden. "Gods," I choked, burying my face into the thick fur at her neck. "You're here. You're actually here." Alina leaned into me, enormous head draping gently over my shoulder, like she was hugging me back. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, not because she was heavy, but because I had never felt so held. The absence I'd lived with my entire life suddenly felt stark in contrast. "You're so beautiful," I whispered, voice breaking. Alina nudged her forehead against mine, the golden mark brushing my skin and sending a ripple of warmth down my spine. I pulled back slightly, wiping my cheeks, though tears still clung to my lashes. My heart swelled with something fierce and desperate. "You are too," she said, humor lining the rich timbre of her voice. "Just not when you're ugly crying." A watery laugh tore out of me as I rested my forehead against hers. "Does this mean," I gasped, breath trembling, "I can fully shift now?" I looked from Alina to the moon goddess. "Can I finally become whole?" The goddess's face softened, something like sorrow flickering in her eyes. "I'm afraid not, child," she murmured. My stomach dropped. "What? But you brought me to her." I looked back at Alina. "She's right here. I can feel her." "Yes," she said, stepping closer. "And that is why I allowed this meeting. You needed to see what lies within you, not as fragments or instincts, but whole." Alina let out a soft rumble, brushing her muzzle against my palm as if urging me to listen. "But you cannot fully shift," the goddess continued, "because parts of your spirit remain fractured." I flinched. "Fractured how?" Her gaze pierced me, not judgmental, simply knowing. "You carry grief you have not forgiven, hope you have not trusted, strength you have not claimed, love you have not allowed yourself to feel." Kieran's face flashed in my mind unbidden, wet hair clinging to his forehead, eyes frantic as he held me in the rain. Impossibly, I heard his voice, a low timbre like a caress on my heart. "I love you, Sarah. Come back to me, please." I clenched my fists, fingers tangling in Alina's fur. There I went again, imagining things to comfort myself. "And if I overcome all of that," I whispered, "you'll give me my wolf." A small, sad smile touched the moon goddess's lips. "I do not give wolves, they are born with you. I only bless the path to reach them." She touched a hand to her chest, then mine. "This choice lies within you, not me. When you believe you are whole, Alina will be yours fully." Frustration burned hot beneath my ribs. "So it's all on me, again." "Yes," she said softly, "your path has been harder than many, but I do not allow my children to bear burdens they are not strong enough to overcome." I almost scoffed at the moon goddess. "No one is born wanting to suffer," I bit out. "I didn't ask for this." She cupped my face, her touch feather-light. "No, child, you didn't, but you will succeed. You will overcome." My throat tightened. The words should have comforted me, but instead a heavier weight settled in my chest, a reminder that hope can sting as much as despair. I wanted to ask more. Why didn't she help sooner? Why did she allow me to suffer? Why did my destiny seem like a riddle I wasn't given the answer key to? But before I could speak, she lifted her hand, palm warm with fading light. "It's time for you to return." Panic clawed up my chest. "No, wait, please. I'm not ready. I still have questions." I tightened my hold on Alina. I wasn't ready to say goodbye when I didn't know when I'd see her again. "I know," the moon goddess said, voice somber, and you will find your answers, but not here, not from me." Her gaze deepened, revealing the centuries of power and knowledge within her. "You have to go back now. There are people waiting for you, people who love you more fiercely than you realize." Daniel, Maya, Lucian. My breath hitched. Kieran. The goddess stepped forward, resting her hand against my cheek again. "I expect greatness from you, child," she whispered, "but not because of your bloodline, because of the choices your heart makes, because of who you are. You rose where others would have broken. You loved where others would have hated. You believed in others long before you believed in yourself." Tears blurred my vision. "But do not forget, Serafina, your story is not just about survival. You are meant to live, to conquer, to thrive." Her thumb brushed a tear from my cheek with a tender swipe. "And you are loved, child, deeply. Never forget that." A bright light erupted behind the moon goddess, swallowing the glade in a wash of silver. Her outline blurred, dissolving into the radiance until she was nothing but a silhouette, then a shimmer, then gone. Alina still stood before me, solid and breathtaking, her silver coat glowing faintly in the lingering haze. But without the goddess's presence anchoring the world, the air around my wolf felt thinner, looser, as if the dream itself were beginning to unravel. I felt myself tugged backward, as if the world behind me had hooked invisible fingers into my spine. "Alina," I whispered. She pressed her forehead to mine, warm and steady, grounding me even as the edges of her form began to waver. First subtly, like heat waves rising off asphalt, then more insistently, her outline flickering between sharp and translucent. "No," I breathed, fingers tightening in her fur. "Not yet. Please, not yet." Her amethyst eyes softened, infinite affection swirling as her voice echoed, steady and gentle, carrying a promise. "See you soon, Sarah." Cold hit first, then texture. A blanket pressed against my bare skin, wet and thin, clinging to me like a second layer. Then pressure. Arms around me, strong and possessive, as if they intended to hold on to me forever. My eyelashes fluttered. Someone was breathing fast, uneven, strained, each inhale catching like he was holding back a sob. I opened my eyes and lifted my head. Kieran. His face hovered inches from mine, eyes wide, lips parted, damp hair falling over his forehead. His bare chest rose and fell against mine, muscles taut as though bracing for the world to end. And the moment our eyes met, something detonated. A force, violent, magnetic, primal, slammed into me, threading through my veins like lightning. My soul lurched forward, my heartbeat sinking to his with a fierce suddenness that spun the world violently. I gasped. Kieran froze. His voice was barely a whisper, raw and splintered. "Sarah." The bond snapped awake between us. Not subtle, not gentle, not questioning. Undeniable. I felt him. His terror, his relief, his love. His arms tightened instinctively, as if his body recognized me before his mind fully caught up. My lips parted, breath trembling. His eyes glistened, shock, awe, and something deeper rising to the surface like dawn over storm clouds. I couldn't tell whose voice carried the word, whether it slipped from my mouth his, or fate itself whispering through us. "Mate." Serafina's Pove. I found my car parked in Kieran's driveway, probably retrieved from the Lockwood estate after I abandoned it. I had no idea how I drove home without crashing it. My foot slammed the accelerator as I sped through the empty streets, awash with pre-dawn light. With every mile, the bond tugged at me like a thread stretching thin, and I just kept chanting internally, "Don't look back, just get home." By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sky had warmed to pale gold. I killed the engine and sat there for a long moment, forehead resting against the steering wheel as the gravity of everything that had happened pressed onto me. The library, my mother's words, the moon goddess, Alina, Kieran, mate. It was hard to believe that all this had happened in the span of less than 24 hours, that I had a life before all this, that I was. Realization struck like a bolt of lightning, sending a cold rush through me as dread settled heavily in my stomach. I'd been gone all day and night. "Daniel." I shoved the car door open and rushed inside, heart racing. "Daniel?" I called out, panic lacing my voice. Silence greeted me. The house was still. Oh gods. Just as the claws of panic wrapped around my throat, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I snatched it up with trembling fingers. "Kieran, Daniel's safe. He's with my parents." I let out a heavy breath and sagged against the nearest wall as relief poured through me like warm water. "Sarah." Thank you. I stared at the blinking cursor far too long, hesitating. As much as I loved and wanted to see my baby, I was a wreck right now, and dragging him into this chaos, especially before his ceremony, felt cruel. So I added, "Could you please ask your parents to keep him for a while longer?" The reply came almost immediately. "Kieran, done. And then, take all the time you need, Sarah. I'll be here when you're ready." With my heart no longer thundering a mile a minute, the magnitude of Kieran's message sank in. That should have made me feel better, knowing he wasn't pushing. Yet the ache in my chest lingered. I turned off my phone without replying. I tilted my head back against the wall and closed my eyes. Unbidden, a solitary tear slid down my cheek. "Alina," I whispered, my voice too loud in the quiet house. "Sarah?" Her soft voice was like a balm on my aching heart. "Kieran's our mate." "Yeah," she sighed. "It appears he is. Do you want to talk about it?" Did I want to talk about it? No, but I needed an outlet for the heat burning under my skin before it devoured me whole. The OTS sparring arena smelled of metal, sweat, stone, and old fury. And this early in the morning, it was blissfully empty. I stepped into the center, cracked my knuckles, and let all the tangled, fucked-up emotions within me unspool into raw energy. My aura flared so sharply that the light panels overhead flickered. The heat of the bond pulsed in my veins like lava, strengthening everything. My senses, my speed, my reflexes. Power surged outward, like a storm unleashed, violent and instinctive, as I went through all the training simulations like tearing through tissue paper. I didn't stop, didn't ease or relent until my fist collided with a training dummy and ripped straight through it. Foam and fibers exploding outward like confetti. The shock rattled up my arm, but the frustration inside me only burned hotter, refusing to be dulled by pain. I could feel Alina under my skin. There, full, whole, bright, beautiful. I should have been able to shift. That was the last step, the last destination in the journey I began all those months ago. I dropped to all fours, breath shaking, forcing energy outward, feeling my bones tighten, skin heat, willing the transformation. And still nothing. "Why?" I screamed, slamming my palm into the mat hard enough to sting. What am I still missing? A maddening thought slithered in, one I didn't want to entertain. Did I need the mark? Is that what I needed to be whole? Did accepting Kieran complete the shift? How ridiculous. How cruel. How perfectly on brand for fate to bind my power to the man who had broken me. Alina's voice rose softly from within, warmth brushing against the edges of my mind. "Do not confuse paths with prisons. The bond does not define your becoming. As the moon goddess said, you are fragmented. You will shift when you believe you're whole. Whole. I spent so long wishing for that, thinking it meant being able to shift, being one with my wolf. Apparently I was mistaken. It turns out it was a prerequisite. I collapsed backwards, staring at the ceiling, my vision swimming as my heart beat an erratic drumbeat against my rib cage. I stayed like that for a long time and didn't notice the faint footsteps until a shadow fell over me. I turned as Lucian lowered himself to the ground beside me, stretching out one long leg, posture relaxed but eyes sharp. "Well, you certainly taught those dummies a lesson," he drawled. Despite myself, I huffed a laugh. "You've grown much stronger," he observed. "Not just physically. It feels like a storm found its center." The bond jolted inside me. I swallowed. Something like that. "Something's changed." His gaze lingered on me, thoughtful. I hesitated. Lucian was part of the small handful of people I trusted on this earth, but some instinct, deep, primal, newly awakened, kept me silent. It was one thing to confide in him when it was merely speculation, but bone-deep clarity was another. The mate bond felt too new, too raw, too sacred, too vulnerable to expose to anyone, especially someone with whom I had complicated entanglements. When I didn't speak, Lucian didn't push. Instead, he stretched out beside me, lying flat on the mat, hands folded behind his head. "You know," he murmured, "when power spikes like that, it's rarely about ability. It's about emotion, confusion, instability, something unresolved." Understatement of the year. I made a dismissive sound. "So what's unresolved?" I exhaled. I couldn't bring myself to tell him about Kieran and the affirmed bond, or about the dream with the moon goddess and Alina's form, but he was still my friend, and there was still a shit ton of unresolved feelings I could share with him. "My whole life," I started softly, "I've been defined by where I belong, who I belong to, Lockwood's neglected daughter, Blackthorn's unwanted wife, Daniel's mother, OTS Sarah. But I never stop long enough to ask who I am outside those labels. When all of that is stripped away, when I'm standing bare, alone, who am I? Lucian turned his head slightly toward me. That's a powerful question. I folded my hands on my stomach. After Daniel's ceremony, I think I want to leave for a while. The words surprised me as they left my lips, but hearing them aloud made me realize how much I meant them, how badly I needed a change of scene. The trip to Shadowvale had been eye-opening like nothing else before it. I wanted more of that. Space and time to find who I really was when all the labels of who I should be weren't pressing down on me. To figure out what whole meant. Lucian's brows lifted. Leave? Not permanently. I stared at the ceiling as the plan formed in my mind with startling clarity. But I want to travel, visit other territories, explore cities, pacts, lands past the borders. I want to see who I am outside of. I waved my hand in a vague circle. Everything. Lucian was silent for a long moment. Then softly, I'm not surprised. I turned to him. You're not? He shook his head. You've spent your life being, for lack of a better word, caged. It makes sense you want to learn how to fly. Something in his tone softened me. He sounded almost proud. He sat up, voice shifting to alpha mode. If you go, you'll need protection, political clearance, safe passage. No. I sat up too, shaking my head. I want to go on my own terms. I'll ask for help if I need it, but I need to know I can stand alone. A shadow of something unreadable crossed his face. Admiration, perhaps, or worry. He reached out, fingers brushing a loose strand of hair near my cheek. Instinctively, I leaned back, not sharply but obviously enough to change the atmosphere between us. Lucian's hand froze midair. His eyes flicked to mine, dark and assessing, and I suddenly felt like an X-ray image, all my secrets and inner thoughts bared. You're hiding something, he said quietly. Not accusing, not hurt. Just stating a truth. My pulse stumbled. I held his gaze, steady despite the turmoil beneath. I'm figuring things out, I said carefully, and I need time before I share anything with anyone, including you. His jaw flexed once. Then he nodded. Take all the time you need. I looked away, exhaling slowly, hyper-aware of Lucian's words and the unanswered text on my phone. Take all the time you need. But that was the thing about time. It inevitably ran out. And when it did, I would have to make a choice. Seraphina's POV. I woke up before sunrise on Daniel's birthday. The house was silent in the blue-gray pre-dawn. I lay still, staring at the ceiling, reality pressing in. Daniel's birthday, the day of his heir ceremony. My baby was officially stepping into his new role as heir of the Nightfang pack. The thought was bittersweet, and part of me wanted to crawl under the covers and will this day away. But I couldn't. Today wasn't about me or my fears. So I slipped out of bed and padded down the hallway to Daniel's room. His door was cracked open, just enough to let in the hallway light, and I eased it open without knocking. He was still curled under the blankets, hair a messy halo, one arm dangling off the edge of the bed, breathing soft and steady. My heart clenched painfully. Where did all those precious years go? My mind reeled at the fact that my baby was suddenly 10. It seemed just yesterday he needed me for everything, and now, with each year, that need slipped away, leaving me both proud and unmoored. I sat on the edge of the bed and smoothed a hand over his hair. "Danny?" I whispered. He stirred but didn't wake. I leaned down and kissed the crown of his head, whispering against his skin, "Happy birthday, my love." His lashes fluttered, and he blinked up at me with sleepy confusion. Then his lips curved into a slow, crooked smile. "Morning, Mom." Something in me softened and splintered at the same time. I knew I was probably being dramatic, but I could have sworn he looked older. Not in a drastic way, just a subtle change that said childhood was already slipping through my fingers. "You have a big day ahead of you." I forced a smile. "You should get out of bed and get ready while I make breakfast, your favorite." "Chocolate pancakes?" he asked, instantly more awake. "With strawberries and whipped cream," I affirmed. He grinned and pushed himself up to sit, hair sticking in every direction. He leaned his head onto my shoulder. "Thanks, Mom." I wrapped my arms around him and closed my eyes for a second, memorizing the warmth of his body against mine. 10 years had vanished in the blink of an eye. Another 10 would slip by just as quickly. My baby would be a man, an alpha. He would no longer fit into the crook of my arm. "Don't you dare cry on my birthday," Daniel mumbled when I couldn't hold back a sniffle. I let out a watery laugh. He pulled back, gave me a half-fond, half-exasperated look, and cupped my cheeks as I smiled. "I'm not crying. It's a big day, and I'm so proud of you." He grinned, dropping his hands. "I'm proud of me, too." I laughed, ruffling his hair. "Go on, birthday boy, brush your teeth before your breath knocks someone out." His eyes twinkled. "Oh yeah? Like this? Ah!" I squealed, pulling away as he opened his mouth and blasted stale morning breath in my face. His laughter bounced against the walls, music to my ears. We left just before 10. Daniel bounced into the passenger seat, high on anticipation and excitement. The road stretched ahead, sunlight filtering through palm trees waving in the morning breeze. LA was awake now, bright, loud, chaotic, an exact mirror of the state of my mind. I gripped the wheel tighter, energy simmering beneath my skin, subtle but present, like a low electrical hum I couldn't shut off. I should have grown used to it over the last couple of days, but I just couldn't. Not when the gravity of what it meant constantly pressed down on my shoulders. "You look like you're thinking really hard." I blinked, Daniel's voice bringing me back to the present. "Do I?" "Yeah," he shrugged. "Are you worried about the ceremony? Because you shouldn't be. Dad and Grandpa walked me through everything, like 4 million times." He rolled his eyes. "I think I could do it in my sleep." I let out a soft breath. "I know you'll do great, baby. That's not what I'm worried about." "Then what is it?" I stared straight ahead. The answer clogged my throat. Everything else, the bond, the past, the future, the fact that I felt like my heart was being pulled in 2 different directions. I forced a smile. "Just tired, Mom." His tone was flat, disbelieving, his gaze pierced through with as much intensity as his father's. I nudged his shoulder lightly. "Don't worry about me today, baby. This is your day. Focus on you, okay?" Daniel's eyes narrowed like he wanted to press further, but the Nightfang pack house came into view and diverted his attention. The large fortress buzzed with activity as we drove through the grand gates, where "Happy Birthday, Daniel" banners swayed in the breeze. Pack members hurried by, setting up food tables, decorations, chairs, and inflating bouncy houses. I parked near the entrance. Daniel hopped out before I fully shut off the engine. Chuckling, I stepped out of the car and froze. The moment my feet touched the pack grounds, I felt it. Ashar's power, Kieran's presence, as if the weight and magnitude of the Alpha's power were embedded in the soil itself. And then I saw him. Kieran stood near the main hall entrance, speaking with Christian and Gavin. He wore a black button-up, tailored slacks, no tie, sleeves rolled to his forearms. Simple, clean, powerful. As if he sensed my presence as acutely as I sensed his. He turned, and his eyes found me instantly. Relief washed over his expression so visibly it made my chest tighten. He turned, abruptly cutting off his conversation, and began to walk towards me. My breath hitched as the bond tugged like a magnetic thread between us, strong enough to be slightly painful. I looked away. Daniel slid up to me, and I arched a brow. I thought he'd have run off by now, but he gave me a warm, all-too-knowing smile and slipped his hand into mine. And then, when Kieran stepped closer, Daniel latched onto his hand too. "Hey, bud," he said, looking down at our son, affection shining in his eyes. "Happy birthday." Daniel beamed. "Thanks, Dad." And then Kieran looked at me, and my heart tripped. "It's good to see you," he said quietly. His voice was rough, like he meant more than the words aloud. We hadn't seen each other since I walked out of his room the other day, and good was not the word I would have used to describe seeing him again. Devastating, disorienting, heart-wrenching were good candidates. I nodded once, not trusting my voice around him. The party that afternoon wasn't formal. All the rituals were reserved for the evening ceremony. Kids, some from Daniel's class, others from Nightfang and Frostbane, even Noah and Zach, spilled across the courtyard chasing each other in wolf tag as parents clustered by food tables chatting, one eye on their wards. Daniel tore around with his friends, laughing, wild, free. Watching him like that, unburdened, joyful, made the tight fist of worry inside me unclench. Time was going by fast, yes, but if I worried too much about that, I would miss amazing moments like this. Today was a celebration, and I would ruin it if I spent it in my head. I didn't notice someone approaching until a woman's polite voice cut in. "You must be Daniel's mother." I turned to see a well-dressed woman around my age holding a plate of hors d'oeuvres. I smiled politely. "Yes, I'm Serafina." "Nice to meet you," she said warmly. "I'm Helen. My son Leo is in Daniel's grade." She pointed and I followed the direction of her finger until I spotted a boy with dark curls racing after Daniel. "Ah, yes." I nodded, even though I barely recognized the kid. "He seems sweet." Helen smiled brighter. "I just wanted to thank you for having us." "Oh, it's a pleasure," I replied. "And also, I must say," she leaned in conspiratorially, like we were two friends sharing a secret, "this is the first time I'm seeing you and your husband together. You two look amazing together." She winked. "Very well matched." My smile froze. I inhaled slowly, tamping down the sting of her words. "Oh, there's a misunderstanding," I said evenly. "Daniel's father and I are divorced." Helen's eyes widened, color draining from her face. "Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. From the way he looks at you, I never would have guessed." Heat crawled up my neck, sharp and uncomfortable. "It's fine," I said, forcing a smile to ease her obvious discomfort. "People assume." She nodded quickly, apologized again, and retreated into the crowd. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. "From the way he looks at you." I shook my head, as if that could stop her words from burrowing deeper. My gaze roamed over the crowd, trying to pick out Maya or Lucian or even Ethan, but it seemed all my guests were running behind time. I turned, ready to find a corner to hide in, preferably one where another presuming parent wouldn't find me, when a firm hand closed around my wrist and yanked me away. Serafina's povee. I sucked in a breath as I was pulled sharply to the side into a narrow, shadowed walkway just out of sight. A hard, warm chest pressed against mine, rising and falling with restrained intensity. I didn't need to look up to know whose arms were caging me against the wall. The bond flared, loud and unfiltered, and every emotion hit me at once. Possession, fear, longing, frustration, desperation. Kieran. His scent washed over me, suffocating in its familiarity. I pressed my palms to his chest, not to pull him closer but to keep space between us. His heart pounded so fiercely it felt like it wanted to tattoo itself on my palm. "Kieran," I hissed, voice low so the passing partygoers wouldn't hear. "What the fuck are you doing?" His jaw flexed. He didn't budge. "Trying," he said, voice rough, to stop losing my mind. I blinked, startled by how quickly the atmosphere shifted from confrontation to raw vulnerability. He blew out a shaky breath through his nose, eyes dark and desperate. "I know I told you I would give you time. Fuck, I told myself I'd give you time. I told myself I could handle you pulling away from me. But Sarah," he leaned closer, the bond flaring so violently my heart lurched. "Every time I look at you, and you look away, it feels like being gutted." His words were raw enough to sting. "I'm trying to restrain myself," he said, voice cracking. "But this bond..." His hand curled against the wall beside my head, knuckles white. "It keeps reminding me of how much I want you, how much I need you, and it drives me crazy that you keep pretending you feel nothing." His voice dropped to a hoarse whisper. "How can you be so cruel?" Just like that, the heat in my blood chilled to ice. Cruel. That word was like a slap made of memory. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Not because of his body or the wall or the bond, but because of the sheer fucking audacity. I shoved Kieran hard. He staggered back a step, shock flickering across his features. "Cruel?" My voice trembled with rage. "You're calling me cruel?" His brows pinched and he had the fucking nerve to look confused. "Sarah, no." The word cut out of me like a blade. "You do not say bullshit to me." Heat surged to my face, hands shaking as I stabbed a finger at his chest. "Do you even remember our marriage?" I demanded. His lips parted slightly, Haley, jaw tensing. I stepped forward. A red haze crept in at the edge of my vision. "Do you remember brushing past me in the corridors like I was furniture? Do you remember ignoring me like I was an alarm you could snooze? Do you remember treating me like I was an obligation, a hindrance, a mistake you had to endure?" Kieran flinched, the color draining from his face. "You want to talk about cruelty?" My laugh was sharp and humorless. "Let's talk about how every time we slept together you saw Celeste. Remember when you told me that? Remember when you said I never mattered? When you accused me of trapping you?" His eyes shut tight. Pain flashed across his face. "That," I whispered, voice splintering, was cruelty. Silence flooded the walkway, thick enough to choke on. The bond churned beneath my skin, stirring grief and longing with a fierce rawness that made me feel like I was being skinned alive. Kieran opened his eyes slowly, guilt etched into every line of his face. Sarah. His voice was barely more than breath. I was blind. I was so angry and broken, and you were there, and His throat worked. I hurt you because it was easier than blaming myself. It would have been easier if he'd yelled. Instead, he spoke softly and reverently, like someone handling something they're afraid to break. I know I failed you, he whispered. I know I made you feel unwanted. I know I ruined what we could have had. His voice broke. And now I finally feel everything I should have felt back then. I want to make it right. I want to... Make me forget? I cut in. He reeled back as if I'd struck him. That's not what I meant. But that's what you're asking. I wrapped my arms around myself to stop the tremors running up and down my spine. You said you weren't trying to erase the past, but that's exactly what you want. You want me to pretend the last 10 years never happened, like that version of us never existed, that the mate bond magically fixes everything. He swallowed hard, but didn't deny it. I stepped back, putting distance between us, even though it ripped something inside me to do it. My back met the cold cement of the wall behind me, and it took all my willpower not to sag against it. Go on then, I said softly. Make me forget. Erase all the pain of those years from my mind, from my fucking heart. His jaw ticked, helplessness and sorrow swirling in the dark depths of his eyes. Unless you can do that, Kieran, unless you can actually really wipe the slate clean, give me fucking amnesia. I shook my head, the words trembling out of me. You can't ask me to stand here and pretend the bond is enough. His gaze dropped to the ground, shoulders bowing as if something heavy had been dropped on him. I don't want you to pretend. His voice was hoarse. Fuck Sarah. I don't know how to live with what I did, knowing it cost me you. I want to fix it. I'm going out of my mind trying to figure out how to fix it. Something inside me splintered, the rawness of his guilt breaking through my defenses. For a moment, I saw the man beneath the alpha, the man who was terrified he had already destroyed the future fate intended for him. He reached for my hand, slow and hesitant, not forceful, not demanding, just longing. Please, he whispered, let me try to make amends. I pulled my hand back before he could touch me. His fingers hung in the air, empty. The pain that crashed across his face hit me like a wave. I felt it through the bond, piercing, debilitating agony. Fuck, I couldn't do this right now. Kieran, I said, voice low, not today. He stared at me, confused and wounded. Why not? Because this is Daniel's day. I forced my voice steady, and I won't let our mess ruin it. His breath stuttered, jaw tightening. I'm not trying to ruin anything. No, I whispered, but you will if you push this now. Over his shoulder I spotted Maya and Ethan, their arms laden with presents, and a small breath whooshed out of me. I have to go. I stepped past Kieran, his body tensed, instinctively wanting to follow, to pull, to fix, but he stayed rooted in place. I walked away before the bond could drag me back, before his scent could cloud my judgment. Before the part of me desperately aching for him won, Lucian's povie. I arrived later than I intended, mostly because I wasted time weighing the pros of seeing Sarah against the cons of entering Kieran Blackthorn's territory. Obviously, the pros won out. Nightfang's courtyard buzzed, children screeching, parents hovering with plates, the entire pack alive with excitement for the heir's birthday. The sun drenched the area in Californian light, reflecting off torches and banners, making everything seem sharper and louder. But none of that could distract me from the only reason I came. I instantly sought out Sarah, attuning my senses to her unique scent and aura. I wish I didn't. I wish I had never come, because then I wouldn't have overheard their conversation. It wasn't even intentional. I turned toward a hidden walkway looking for a quiet vantage point, and the sharp, charged scent of heightened emotions hit me before I saw them. Then I heard her voice. Not calm Sarah, not soft Sarah, not the composed woman she always tried to be around me. No, that voice was trembling with fire. I know I should have walked away as soon as I realized it was Sarah and Kieran. This was absolutely none of my business. But I edged forward, slowly, silently, enough to see the angle of Kieran's back, the harsh line of his shoulders, and just past him, Sarah. Flushed, breathless, eyes bright with unshed tears and rage so intense it took my breath away. Not the way she ever looked at me. Her emotions around me were always measured, steady, contained beneath layers of self-preservation. She kept her heart guarded, her reactions controlled. Even at her most vulnerable, she never let herself truly unravel in front of me. But with Kieran, she was unraveling. Her chest rose and fell too quickly. The tremor in her hands was visible even from where I stood. Her voice shook with raw, visceral honesty, stabbing me with every word. And the bond, fucking hell, I could feel it from here. Like static in the air, a tangible gravitational pull between them. So it was true. They were mates. Not speculation or suspicion. Definite. I had prepared for this news. Since that day in OTS when her power spiked and paralyzed me, I knew something had shifted. I knew she was growing stronger, and with that strength would come clarity about the bond. But knowing something in your bones and hearing it spoken aloud, especially in her voice, were two very different things. It hit me like a strike to the gut. I couldn't take my eyes off Sarah. Her cheeks were pink, her lips parted, her eyes bright, her pulse was visible at her throat. One might have heard her words spoken in trembling rage and mistaken her reaction for hatred. But I'd seen that look before, had it directed at me a long time ago. That wasn't the composure of a woman standing before a man she hated. That was the response of a woman whose mate bond was awake, alive, thrumming through every inch of her, the reaction of a lover. My hands balled into fists. My competition was now clear as day. Not Kieran himself. No, I could handle him, strategize around him, outsmart him, outscheme him. But a mate bond? A primal force woven into their blood and souls? That was a battle I had no guarantee of winning. Regan's question from before echoed in my mind. So tell me, will you back down because of it? And my reply, back down? You know that's not me. But now, doubt pricked beneath my ribs, unwelcome, unfamiliar, poisonous. Had I been deluding myself into thinking I had time? That my steady patience, my availability, my unwavering belief in her would eventually carve space in her heart? Seeing them like this, no, I wasn't sure anymore. I have to go. I stepped back into the jarring brightness of the courtyard as Sarah walked away before they could notice me, heart thudding with something terrifyingly close to despair. I had told her I would respect her choice, a noble sentiment in theory. But standing here, witnessing this bond thrumming between them like a living thing, I realized I couldn't let go. I couldn't watch her be pulled back into the orbit that had once consumed her. I couldn't allow this to reach a point of no return. Sarah had to become my Luna. I wouldn't let the moon goddess's whims keep her from the future she deserved. From the future I intended to give her, a voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. Lucian Reed? I turned. Maxwell Cartridge stood a few meters away, brow raised, arms crossed loosely over his chest. I'd met Maya's brother briefly when her family arrived to meet the Lockwoods. It wasn't really a memorable meeting, courteous at best, so I was surprised he would seek me out at a party. His twins were nowhere in sight, probably terrorizing the dessert table. His expression was measured and composed, but unmistakable surprise flickered in his eyes. I plastered on a polite, distant smile. Maxwell, he approached slowly. From all the gossip Maya fed me with, I'm surprised to see you here. I fought back an eye roll. Maya's penchant for absorbing and redistributing gossip was so off-brand for the rest of her personality that sometimes I wondered if she was even the same person. I came for Sarah, I told Maxwell. Instantly, both our gazes drifted to one place. Sarah stood near the center of the courtyard, Ethan at her side, who was watching Maya with a love-struck smile while she spoke, gesturing animatedly before them. Sarah laughed at something Maya said. Her shoulders relaxed, her lips curving into a genuine smile, a jarring contrast from the venomous glare she shot Kieran earlier. Maxwell exhaled softly, a sound somewhere between admiration and longing. Hair rose on the back of my neck. I did not like the way he looked at her. To him, I imagined, she appeared as she always did to the public eye, a kind, steady, resilient woman who had endured more than anyone should and still managed to radiate warmth. But to me, I saw the woman standing on the OTS training mat, power thrumming beneath her skin. I saw her breaking limits she didn't know she had, softening only long enough to wipe sweat off her brows before charging again. I saw her pushing against the boundaries of her past and demanding better from her future. Sarah wasn't ordinary. She was remarkable. A Luna forged from scars and stubborn hope. Maxwell saw the version of her that made a home warm. I saw the version of her that could lead a pack into a new era. Two perspectives, two truths, both entirely different. My jaw tightened. "Maxwell," I said quietly, eyes still on Sarah, "be honest with me. Do you also plan to pursue her?" His head whipped toward me, startled enough that he actually choked on his own breath. "Pursue? Me?" He blinked rapidly. "Lucien, I have 2 children who climb walls for fun, try to fist-fight each other every morning, and believe sleep is for the weak and stupid. When would I have the time to pursue anyone?" Despite myself, a short, humorless breath escaped me. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Do I think she's incredible? Absolutely. Do I understand why 2 alphas are circling her like territorial bears? Of course." He cast a side glance at me, amused and pointed. "But pursuing her? No, I can barely pursue 10 minutes of uninterrupted peace." His smile faded, replaced by something gentler. "Besides, for a woman like Sarah, a man's affection is the least impressive thing he could offer. What matters more is who she wants to become, and whether the man beside her helps her become that or cages her." I felt the implication of his words like a blade gliding beneath skin. Sarah's words filtered in from the last day at OTS. "I want to leave for a while. I want to see who I am outside of everyone's expectations." Maxwell looked at me with a quiet understanding that rankled. "Maya tells me you're a strategist, Lucien. You're always 3 steps ahead, always pulling strings, always controlling outcomes. But Sarah," he shook his head, "she's not a chess piece." My jaw clenched. The idea of this near stranger schooling me was grating on my nerves. "You think I don't know that?" "I think you know it," he said evenly. "But I also think you don't know how to stop trying to control everything around you." I stiffened. His gaze held mine, steady, unflinching. Even the moon goddess leaves room for uncertainty, for choice. She gives us bonds but does not punish those who reject them. A cold, sharp silence settled between us. The air crackled with unspoken tension. I wasn't sure if he was cautioning me, for Sarah's sake, or for my own. Either way, I knew one thing. I couldn't be friends with Maxwell Cartridge. I admired his sister, and she was one of the few people I trusted to have my back. But my train of thought was interrupted when a high-pitched voice echoed from across the yard, breaking the tension. "Presents!" Daniel barreled toward the gift table at full speed, nearly knocking over a stack of cupcakes on the way. His friends followed, a stampede of tiny pups shrieking with excitement. Parents gathered, forming a semicircle. The atmosphere warmed instantly, a mix of the kind of pride and joy that children's milestones summoned. Sarah moved toward the table with Maya and Ethan trailing behind her, her expression softening as she watched her son bounce in place, glowing with anticipation. Kieran joined them from the opposite side, posture protective, eyes fixed on his son, but flickering every so often towards Sarah. As she knelt beside Daniel to help him open the first gift, her hair falling over her shoulder, her smile bright, I felt the truth settle in me with the weight of an anchor. I wasn't ready to lose her. Not to fate, not to Kieran, not to anyone. Seraphina's Pof. Daniel's laughter rang through the courtyard like sunlight, bright and warm, as he tore into another gift with unrestrained excitement. For the first time since I stepped out of that suffocating walkway, my frantic heartbeat finally settled. Not fully. There was still a tight coil of emotion lodged beneath my ribs, but at least I wasn't seconds away from breaking in half. If that conversation had happened before, years ago, when I still lived under the same roof as Kieran, but was lonelier than I'd ever been, I would have been too tired to argue, too numb, too used to swallowing every splinter he gave me with a brave smile. Back then, his distance was predictable. His coldness was routine. Fighting was futile. But now everything was different. The irony, it was the bond that had changed me. Not just physically, though that was obvious. My senses were sharper, my strength steadier, my endurance growing by the day. But the emotional shift, that was the part no one warned me about. Every feeling was amplified, distilled into something sharper, acute, more impossible to ignore. Things that once barely pricked now stabbed. Things I could once shrug off now lingered like thorns under skin. Kieran's words from earlier, "How can you be so cruel?" still rang in my ears. Another version of me, the me from fucking last week, would have scoffed, thrown his words away with a bitter laugh, and kept walking. This version of me, every syllable felt like sandpaper dragged across my heart. And the worst part, the part I hated the most, was the growing awareness of him. The way my emotions tangled with his through the bond. The way my chest still ached when I remembered the look on his face, the helplessness in his voice, the sincerity, the guilt, the longing. I couldn't stop resenting him. It would never be that easy. But I also couldn't stop loving him. Both truths lived inside me, hollowing me out from opposite ends. And it made me wonder, did he feel the same? Was the bond puppeteering every emotion he thought he had? If his obsession, his desperation, was nothing more than biology forcing him to want me, then that was cruelty on a whole different level. And after years of longing for Kieran, I didn't want a version of him tied to me only because fate said so. A loud gasp dragged me back to the present. "Oh my gosh, Grandpa's sword!" Daniel held a wooden training sword above his head like it was a treasure looted from an ancient temple. It was faded with age, the polish worn, the grip wrapped with old leather, but the ecstasy in his eyes made it glow like it was forged from gold. Daniel darted forward and threw his arms around my mother's waist. "Thank you, Grandma." My mother bent, wrapping her arms around Daniel. "You're very welcome, darling. Your grandfather would have wanted you to have it." I inhaled slowly, acknowledging her presence for the first time today. I hadn't spoken to her, not since that day, not since those words. "You were destined to live an ordinary life, mundane, unremarkable." But now she stood there, her arms around my son, smiling at him warmly as if someone had prophesied to her that he was destined for greatness. Her gaze lifted and found mine. Guilt, regret, hope. I looked away. Not today. This wasn't the moment to reopen wounds. I forced myself to focus instead on Daniel's beaming face as he swung the little sword like a knight saving the world. The gifts began to dwindle, and the children started drifting toward cupcakes and lemonade. Daniel suddenly frowned. "Wait!" He counted again, then again. His eyebrows knitted as he turned to me. "Mom, where's your gift?" Dozens of eyes shifted to me. I smiled, slow and secretive. "I didn't bring it in a box." His brows drew deeper. "Then where is it?" "It's a surprise," I said, lowering my voice like we were conspiring. "Just for you." His excitement nearly launched him off the ground. "Can I see it now? You tell me? Are you done here? All gifts opened?" He nodded so fast his face momentarily blurred. "Yes, let's go," I chuckled, leaning down. "But first," I pulled a black bandana from my pocket. "I have to blindfold you." He blinked. "Seriously? Do I need to gift you a dictionary and read you the meaning of surprise?" "Fine," he groaned dramatically, but the smile fighting its way onto his face betrayed him. He turned around, and I tied the cloth gently around his eyes. "Mom," he snorted, "I can still smell where we're going." "You can smell the whole forest, baby," I countered. "You'll survive the suspense." I was aware of Kieran watching us, trying to appear neutral but failing miserably, with a soft, aching look that pierced too deep. When I was done tying the blindfold, I tugged on Daniel's hand. "Come on." We slipped into the forest behind the pack house. The shift from noise to quiet hit instantly. Shadows played between trees, sunlight dripping through leaves like spilled gold. The air smelled of damp earth, cedar wood, and the lingering sweetness from all the sugary treats Daniel had consumed. "Mom?" Daniel whispered. "Where are we going?" "Shh, almost there." The path curled around thick brush until we reached the clearing. An ancient oak tree stood at the center, massive, sprawling, older than the pack house itself. Its branches twisted like arms reaching toward the sky, sturdy and welcoming, and nestled perfectly among them, the treehouse. Small enough to be cozy, large enough for a boy whose energy could power a small village for a year. The wooden planks were sanded smooth, stained a soft, honey brown. A tiny porch extended from the front, and a rope ladder hung from one side. A small lantern swung in the light breeze, catching the sun. "Okay," I whispered, stepping behind Daniel. "You can take it off." His hands flew to the blindfold, tugging it off in one motion. His breath caught. Then he dropped the cloth. "Mom," his voice cracked. Is that? I nodded, throat tight. "It's yours." He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at the treehouse with wide, trembling eyes. I knelt beside him. I know one day you're going to be a big bad alpha with vast territories under your control, but this, I waved towards the treehouse, is your first. His head whipped toward me. Is it really all mine? All yours, I said, smiling. I bought the land from your grandpa. I spent a substantial chunk of my winnings from the LST, but it was so worth it. This space belongs to you and only you. No one, and I mean no one, can enter without your permission. Not me, not even Alpha Kieran or former Alpha Christian. Daniel's lips parted slightly, eyes shining. You make the rules, I continued softly. If you need quiet, if you're upset, if you're tired of being strong or brave or responsible, this place will always be your safe space. And when you're inside, always remember how much I love you. His chin wobbled. I reached out, brushing a curl from his forehead. Happy birthday, baby. The emotions finally overwhelmed him. With a choked breath, Daniel launched himself at me, arms squeezing tight around my neck, face buried into the space between my shoulder and collarbone. I wrapped both arms around him, pressing my cheek against his temple. His small body trembled with soundless, overwhelmed sobs he desperately tried to hold back. Thank you, he whispered fiercely against my skin. Mom, this is the best gift ever. My throat tightened. I kissed his hair, breathing him in. Only the best for my baby, I murmured. He stayed like that for a long moment, letting the weight of being a growing alpha melt into the arms of his mother. My boy, my whole world. When he finally pulled back, wiping furiously at his eyes, he pointed at the treehouse with shaky excitement. Can I go inside? I smiled. It's your territory, little alpha. You don't need my permission. He grinned, chest swelling proudly, and bolted up the rope ladder with renewed joy. As he disappeared inside, his laughter echoing through the branches, I stood beneath the ancient oak and let the moment settle deep into my bones. This peace, this happiness, this was why I'd endure every storm the world threw at me. This was why I'd keep fighting. For Daniel, for myself, and maybe, one day, for the version of love I deserved. Kieran's Pav. I should have walked away. When Sarah led Daniel into the forest, blindfold and all, I should have turned back to the courtyard, mingled with the guests, pretended I wasn't dying to know what she'd planned for him. But I didn't move. I stood there, rooted, breaths uneven, heart pounding, as she vanished into the trees with our son. I tried to keep my expression neutral. Judging by the sidelong glance and the knowing smirk Gavin tried and failed to hide, I was doing a piss-poor job of it. I told myself I wasn't bothered. I told myself I wasn't envious. I told myself I wasn't hoping Sarah would include me in whatever she had planned. But then the trees swallowed them, and bitterness scorched my chest. She didn't look back. She didn't ask me to come. And I had no right to expect her to. Not after the walkway. Not after what I said. How can you be so cruel? Gods, I deserved every bit of fury she threw at me. All her words, tiny, poisonous darts that sank into me and curdled my insides, rang true, and I had no defense against them. I was the one who had been cruel and callous. I had no right to play the victim or attempt to turn the tide. And yet, knowing all that, the bond defied logic and reason. It pulsed beneath my skin, restless and aching and gnawing, whispering desires I had no right to claim. Children were fighting over sweets at the dessert table. Adults clinked glasses and chatted in low murmurs. Music hummed softly in the background. The whole pack was alive with celebration. My body was alive with tension as my eyes stayed glued to the edge of the forest. And then, a burst of sound, a laugh, Daniel's, rang through the trees, pure, wild, unfiltered joy. Then another sound, softer, Sarah. I didn't go to them. Ashar thrashed inside me, wanting nothing more than to be with his mate and pup, but I held myself back. I knew that, after earlier, one more misstep, no matter how small and well-meaning, might send her running, but I couldn't decide if holding back was the right choice or just another mistake. When they finally returned, Daniel was glowing from the inside out, eyes shiny, cheeks flushed, smile stretching to his ears. Sarah walked beside him, her expression soft, warm in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in years, maybe ever. Dad, Daniel dashed to me, taking my hands in his. You have to see what Mom got me. It's freaking awesome. I chuckled, but the sound came out slightly brittle. Yeah? He nodded, his hair flopping forward into his eyes. He tugged on my hand. Come see. He paused and turned to Sarah. I can show him, right, Mom? I could see in the lines of tension in her shoulders and neck that she was trying her very best not to look at me. Of course, baby. She ruffled his hair. It's your present. You can show it to anyone you want. He whooped, and the next thing I knew, a small party. Me, Ethan, Maya, my father, mother, and Margaret was following Daniel and Sarah back into the forest. And when I saw what she'd given him, the treehouse nestled in the oak, built on a piece of land she bought just for him, my breath left me in one harsh exhale. Unlike most of the presents Daniel had unwrapped, Sarah's gift wasn't ostentatious. It wasn't a show of wealth or prestige or power. While every other gift said to the Night Fang heir, "Go conquer the world," Sarah's said, "Go conquer the world. But remember, you can always come back here and be yourself. You're safe here. I'll always love you here." It was the kind of gift only someone with a heart as big and warm as Sarah's could give. The custom-made dagger I'd given him felt suddenly shallow. I should have been a part of this gift. It should have come from Daniel's father and mother. But I'd lost that privilege a long time ago. As Daniel proudly showed off the rope ladder, explaining every inch of his own territory, I watched Sarah from across the clearing. The afternoon sun kissed her skin, her hair glowing like an angel's halo. Her eyes, achingly tender and fiercely vigilant, followed our son's every movement. The soft, aching curve of her smile made my chest twist, sharp and raw. Gods, she was captivating. How had I spent 10 years being so blind to her allure? Had I been under some kind of curse? The fact that I used to be the person closest to her, the one who should have known her best, uplifted her most, sheltered her deepest, and instead I had been the one who tore her down. Humiliation burned sharp and unforgiving beneath my ribs. And now, to stand here and want her forgiveness, want her acceptance, want her love, just because fate finally slapped me awake. It was shameless. I was shameless. And yet, shamelessly, I wanted her. I wanted a chance to be decent, to be better, to be someone worthy of being tied to her, bond or not. Make me forget, erase all the pain of those years from my mind, from my fucking heart. Gods, I wished I could. Better yet, I wished I could go back in time and make sure I never hurt her. Make sure I bombarded her with all the love and affection she deserved. I was brought back to the present when Daniel tugged lightly on Sarah's sleeve. I realized that the exhibition party had dissipated, leaving just the three of us in the clearing. "Mom, can we go inside the treehouse? Just you and me? For a bit?" The request hit me harder than it should have. I knew he wasn't excluding me out of spite. We'd grown closer over the last couple of weeks, especially through his training. But Sarah would always be the one he turned to for comfort and care, especially on the precipice of the heavy role he was about to step into. I couldn't begrudge him that. Sarah glanced at me briefly, her guard instantly shooting up, almost like she expected resistance. "Dad," Daniel said in a tentative tone. "That's okay, right?" I just shrugged. It was supposed to be a nonchalant gesture, but judging by how heavy my shoulders felt, I doubt it came across that way. "Hey, it's your territory, bud." I'd ruined enough moments of hers. "Let them have this one." Sarah's shoulders eased. Daniel beamed. They slipped into the forest again, voices fading beneath the rustling leaves. I exhaled slowly, scrubbing a hand down my face. Give me fucking amnesia. No matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't rewrite the last 10 years. I couldn't erase her suffering. I couldn't undo the cruelty she threw in my face in that corridor, the cruelty I had wielded like a fucking weapon. But every moment moving forward, that I could work with. And if I chose right, again and again and again, then maybe the bond would guide us back to each other. Not because it was fate, but because it was us, Kieran's Pof. Dinner was a blur. Roasted lamb, golden brown and dripping with juices, filled my plate. Charred vegetables tossed in herbs added color and smoke. Laughter rose from every table and rang out, vibrant and wild. Wine poured freely as the pack toasted Daniel's name with the kind of roaring pride only wolves knew how to show. Sarah sat 2 seats away from me, close enough that the bond buzzed like a live wire beneath my skin, far enough that she didn't have to look at me unless absolutely necessary. I tried not to stare. I failed. Miserably. Every time she leaned in to laugh at something Maya whispered, every time the light caught in her hair, every time Daniel turned to her with a story or a grin, My gaze dragged back to her like a tide obeying the moon. And she didn't look at me once, not intentionally anyway, but I was blessed with accidental flicks of her gaze, and each one sent Ashar pacing behind my ribs, restless, agitated, wanting. When the sun dipped behind the hill, sinking the courtyard in shades of gold and violet, the mood shifted like a held breath. The ceremonial torches were lit, their flames stretched tall and steady, bathing the courtyard in amber light. The birthday crowd dispersed quickly. Humans rounded up sugar-drunk kids, non-pack families waved goodbyes, and thankfully, mercifully, Lucian and Maxwell were gone. I had no shame in admitting the relief. I was already hanging by a thread. The last thing I needed was another alpha circling Sarah like she was a flame and he a starving moth. As for Maxwell, I still didn't know how I felt about him, but he had no place in my son's heir ceremony. Only the core remained, Nightfang wolves, Sarah, Ethan, Maya, and Margaret as family. The atmosphere shifted from festive to reverent. Gone were the shrieking pups, games, and sugar-fueled chaos. Gone were the streamers and balloons and bouncy houses. In their place came quiet, noble, ancient, purposeful. This was no longer a 10th birthday party. This was an heir ceremony. Every breath in the courtyard seemed to still in anticipation as Daniel was guided to the center. The boy who had earlier launched himself at a cupcake tower now walked with measured steps, guided by instinct older than any of us. He wore a fitted navy vest embroidered in silver that curled over his chest in the shape of the Nightfang crest. It was paired with a crisp, high-collared white shirt and dark slacks tucked neatly into polished boots. A ceremonial sash draped over his shoulder, shifting from midnight to pale blue, marking him unmistakably as a rising alpha. Each detail of the ceremonial attire had been expertly designed and crafted by Henry Whitlow. My heir ring glinted on his ring finger, and his thumb unconsciously rested against it to keep it from slipping off. He looked impossibly grown and impossibly small at the same time. Pride swelled in my chest, fierce and overwhelming. My son, my heir, he would be greater than me. He would never make any of the mistakes I made. I stepped forward beside him, his father, his alpha, taking my place as naturally as drawing breath. And then my gaze caught on something that punched the breath right out of me. Sarah. She stepped into the circle behind Daniel, torchlight illuminating the soft shimmer of her dress. I had seen her in thousands of outfits. I had seen her dressed in elegance, in sparring gear, and dressed in nothing at all. But nothing before now held me quite so spellbound. She wore a flowing dove-gray gown that hugged her waist and fell in soft folds to her ankles. Silver embroidery traced faint patterns of vines along the sleeves and bodice, subtle, intricate, utterly breathtaking. The neckline dipped modestly, but the simplicity only highlighted the quiet power she carried. At her throat nestled a silver pendant that glowed faintly with the Nightfang crest, and a slight pang shot through me when I realized I was yet to see her wear the necklace I'd made for her. But that minor ache was overwhelmed with awe. She looked God's. She looked like the Luna meant to stand beside an alpha, my Luna. The bond reacted violently to her beauty, to her nearness. Ashar growled, reverent and restless at once. Pressing so close to my consciousness, I felt his heartbeat in my teeth. She didn't glance at me, didn't even flinch in my direction. But the sight of her beside our son, it undid me in ways I couldn't name. My father stepped forward, his voice booming across the courtyard. Nightfang wolves. Tonight, we recognize Daniel Blackthorn as the future alpha of this pack. Wolves bowed their heads. Daniel stood straighter. Then came the first part of the ritual. The pack's blessings. They approached one by one. Luna Leona placed a warm palm on his cheek. Let compassion guide your strength and grace shape your decisions. Beta Gavin placed a firm hand on Daniel's shoulder, murmuring, "Protect before you conquer." More and more pack members stepped forward. You will be courageous. You will be wise. You will honor the past and shape the future. You will be loved by your pack. Each blessing layered upon the next, building something sacred and heavy in the air. And then came the next part of the ceremony, the parental blessing. My father's voice rolled through the courtyard like thunder. Mother, father, step forward. My chest tightened. This was the moment every heir lived or suffered by. The moment where both parents placed their hands over their child's heart, together, where unity, warmth, and protection wrapped around the young wolf like spiritual armor. A child who received this blessing with fractured or hostile parental energy grew with the cracks inside them. A child who received it with love flourished like nothing else. Sarah moved before I did. She stepped beside Daniel and smiled at him, her eyes glinting with unshed tears before placing her hand gently over his heart. Her hand was steady. Mine wasn't. I swallowed, slowly lifted my hand, and placed it over hers, our palms aligning perfectly. Instantly, heat and longing surged, hers, mine, the bonds. Our pulses collided. Ashar thrashed, loud, fierce, desperate. "Mate, mate, mate!" He wanted her. He wanted us. Sarah's breath hitched, her fingers trembled beneath mine. She looked stunned, lashes fluttering, lips parting as if the bonds slammed into her like a tidal wave. "Sarah," I breathed before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked up to mine, and the warning in them was sharp and clear. "Don't." I froze, forced myself still, forced Ashar back, forced my hand to remain exactly where the ceremony demanded, no lower, no firmer scythe, no closer than absolutely necessary. When the blessing ended, I ripped my hand away first. Sarah's relief was visible. My loss was immediate. Ashar snarled inside my head, agitated, pacing, claws scraping against his cage of skin and bone. "She's ours. We haven't made it right yet," I reminded him. "We don't get to claim anything." He growled again, but he didn't argue. My father stepped forward again and nodded to me. "Alpha, it was time. My final role." This part of the ceremony required shifting, displaying pure alpha power so Daniel could feel Ashar's dominance, understand the weight of the position he'd one day inherit, and learn to anchor his own nature against it. I inhaled deeply as I shed my clothes, letting my mind sink into the familiar burn of the transformation. Bones cracked, muscles tore and reformed, fur erupted along my arms and spine, my jaw stretched, reshaped, teeth lengthening into fangs. Ashar roared free in a burst of power that rippled through the courtyard like thunder. Gasps echoed. He was huge, larger than any alpha in our recorded lineage. Gold fur that shimmered under the moonlight, eyes that burned like liquid fire. He was every inch the monster and protector an alpha wolf should be. I meant for him to circle the grounds, meant for him to do exactly what the ritual required. But Ashar had his own agenda. He turned towards Sarah. She stood at the edge of the courtyard, hands curled tightly at her sides, chest rising in shallow, shaky breaths. Her eyes were wide and glowing, not with fear, with awareness, recognition. The bone-deep echo of a mate bond awakened after a decade of silence. Ashar's roar blasted through the courtyard with even more ferocity. I tried to pull him back. "Ashar, stop! This isn't the time." He ignored me and headed straight for Sarah. Seraphina's Pove. The moment Ashar's gold-ringed obsidian eyes locked on me, my lungs forgot how to perform the simple task of inhaling and expelling air. And then he began to move. Towards me. He took slow, deliberate steps, each one heavy enough to vibrate through the ground. The Nightfang members parted before him like the Red Sea, sucking in breaths as the alpha wolf moved with singular purpose. Me. I'd seen Ashar's form before. I'd felt his dominance before. Hell, I'd fought against it. But this was something else entirely. His presence crashed over me, a tidal wave of heat and primal instinct. The torches wavered as he neared, the flames bending toward him as if even fire knew to submit. The mate pull hit like lightning, and I staggered back a half step before I could stop myself. Inside me, Alina whimpered. "Mate," she breathed, wary and aching all at once. I gritted my teeth. "Not now, Alina. Not like this." But Ashar's gaze held mine, direct and unyielding, a silent command reverberating through the bond. My pulse raced. His power radiated in thick waves, shuddering through my bones, threading up my spine. My breaths came short and shallow. I could barely think around the pounding in my head. His words, the last time we spoke, echoed in my mind. "I should have fought harder. I should have taken control, marked you the moment fate tied our names together. I'll be here, waiting, fighting. It would be so easy to give in, to stop fighting, to find out what it would feel like to sate this growing hunger driving me crazy. But this was Daniel's ceremony, and I'd fucking warned Kieran. If he dared ruin this, if he dared make this moment about us instead of our son, I would never forgive him. My fists curled at my sides, nails biting into my palms as Ashar closed the last few feet between us. Just when I felt the pressure inch too close to overwhelming, a gentle but steady voice cut through the tense silence. "Sarah, dear," Leona called warmly, stepping forward with the calm authority only a Luna could possess in the presence of an alpha. "I believe Ashar is inviting you to join the ritual." My head jerked toward her. "What?" Her smile didn't falter, her eyes flicking subtly between Ashar's stance and my trembling hands. She had seen it. She understood exactly what was happening, and she'd intervened before the pack noticed. "Parental collaboration strengthens the heir's spirit," she continued smoothly. "Your presence will help guide Daniel through the final step." Someone exhaled in relief. It might have been me. Someone else murmured, "Oh," as if that explained everything. It didn't, but it was the lifeline I needed. I forced my feet to move, one step, then another, until I stood beside Ashar's massive body, the heat of him blistering against my skin. The moment I came close enough, the bond surged, slamming into me like a physical force. My knees weakened. Ashar lowered his head slightly, an invitation, a demand, a plea all at once. My hand trembled as I lifted it. "Behave yourself," I warned under my breath, unsure if I was talking to him or myself. Then I placed my palm against the side of his neck, and gods, everything reeled for a second. His fur was hot beneath my fingers, thick and impossibly soft. Power thrummed through him, through me, pulsing in rhythm with our synced heartbeats. Ashar exhaled, a deep rumbling sound that vibrated through my arm and straight into my chest. The courtyard went silent, and then we began to move. With every step we took, circling Daniel, the earth itself seemed to hold its breath. Together we walked around our son. Our shared presence formed a cocoon of authority, protection, and something deeper I didn't want to name. Daniel's eyes glowed faintly, his slumbering wolf responding instinctively. He wasn't afraid, he wasn't overwhelmed. He stood tall, chest out, chin up, absorbing every drop of the blessing. When we completed the circle, Ashar lowered himself slightly, nudging me forward with a gentleness that nearly broke me. I swallowed hard and placed my hand on Daniel's forehead. Heat rushed beneath my palm, Ashar's blessing, the alpha's dominance, filtering through me. Daniel closed his eyes, breathing slow and steady. The moment was perfect, and it shattered me. Because this was what we were supposed to be, a family, a mother, a father, a son, united, and yet we weren't. The ritual ended, and Ashar finally, with so much effort it almost looked painful, stepped back. Taking my hand off his coat felt like tearing off a limb. I forced myself to retreat too, one unsteady step at a time, until I reached the edge of the circle. The moment my heel hit the imaginary boundary line, my balance faltered. I staggered, but Maya's arm slid around my waist just in time. "Whoa, Sarah, easy." Her voice was soft but urgent. "You okay?" I gripped her forearm, grounding myself. "I'm fine." She narrowed her eyes. "You don't look fine." Ethan appeared beside her, a scowl forming. "Are you okay?" he demanded. "Did Ashar intimidate you? Damn it, Kieran can be so reckless." "No," I said quickly, shaking my head. "It's not that." "Well, it sure looked like it," Ethan muttered. "He blasted enough alpha power to flatten a damn truck. He should have let you know beforehand if he wanted to modify the ritual. It's one thing for a normal wolf to witness that much power, but you don't even have a wolf, and—" "It's okay," I cut him off. Maya and I exchanged a knowing glance. It really was a testament to her character that, for all her love for gossip, she'd kept Alina a secret from her mate. Ethan didn't look appeased. "He should have been more careful," he grumbled. I shook my head harder. It wasn't the power. They both paused. Maya's brows knit. "Then what?" I looked away. I couldn't tell them. Not yet. Not when even I didn't know how to begin explaining it. But inside, the truth hummed under my skin, undeniable. It wasn't just Ashar's power that rattled me. It was Ashar's emotions, the yearning, longing, desperation, fear, hope. They were similar to Kieran's, but amplified 100-fold. Raw, unfiltered, poured into me like floodwater through a broken dam. It wasn't just overwhelming. It was dangerous. In the space between the moment the mate bond snapped in place and now, I deluded myself that I could stay immune. Ignore it, fight it, outthink it. Whatever I needed to do to have a clear head while I figured out my life. But now, all it took was being in the same space as Kieran, and all my resolve vanished. If I let Kieran or Ashar stay this close, if I let myself feel this often, this deeply, The bond wouldn't just complicate my choices. It would influence them, rewrite them. A chill ran through me. I needed to leave sooner than planned, before the bond made the choice for me. Sarah? Maya's soft voice broke through the fog of my thoughts. You're shaking. I'm fine, I lied. Really? Ethan frowned, watching me closely. You look like you need bed rest, soup, and possibly an exorcism. I shot him a flat look. Thank you for your professional medical opinion. He shrugged. Just saying. Maya squeezed my waist. We'll talk later. Just breathe, okay? Try to get through the rest of the ceremony. I nodded, though the ground still felt unsteady beneath my feet. Christian's voice rose across the courtyard. It is time for the final ritual. Everyone shifted, forming a wide torchlit path leading toward the forest's edge. Flames flickered, casting long shadows on Daniel's small, steady figure. Kieran had shifted back, and hand in hand, he led Daniel to the beginning of the path. My heart clenched. This part symbolized the heir stepping into his future, walking through light and shadow, strength and uncertainty, carrying the blessings he'd received, alone. Kieran, Christian called quietly. Let him go. Kieran nodded once, jaw tight, eyes locked on Daniel with a mixture of pride and fear only a parent understood. Then he stepped back into the crowd. Daniel inhaled, his gaze locked on the other end of the path. He straightened, rolling back his little shoulders, and took his first step. The torches flared as if recognizing him. He walked with steady purpose, each step carrying a weight that belonged not to a child, but to the alpha he would one day become. My grip on Maya's arm was probably painful, but she didn't complain. When Daniel reached the end of the path, he turned. Moonlight washed over him, and my breath caught. Just like that, he wasn't just a boy anymore. He was an heir. He was ready for his future, and now I had to start preparing for mine. Seraphina's path. The courtyard emptied slowly, voices tapering into soft murmurs, torches burning low. The air still vibrated faintly with the residue of the rituals, the blessings, the power, the pride. Daniel's name lingered in the air like smoke. Ethan and Maya only left after I assured them I was fine, and Maya extracted a promise from me to call her when I got home. When the last of the pack members bowed and departed, Nightfang settled into a rare hush. Daniel would stay overnight in the pack house, customary for a newly recognized heir. A tradition symbolizing the child's first night under the roof they would one day lead. I followed him up the stairs, our footsteps muffled by the soft runner carpet. He walked ahead of me with a swagger he'd never had before, his small shoulders pulled back like he was twice his size. When we reached his room, he swept his arm out and pushed the door open with an exaggerated flourish. I held back a chuckle. Need help changing? That outfit was a nightmare to get on. I can change by myself, Mom. He looked over his shoulder, grinning with all the pride of a kid who'd just been handed a kingdom. I'm an heir now. Heirs don't need help with buttons. I raised an eyebrow, crossing my arms. Oh, well then, I guess I'm not needed here. I'll just head home. He was halfway through pulling his ceremonial sash over his head when he suddenly froze in place, his arms tangled in the fabric. No, wait. He rushed out, voice several octaves higher. Then he caught himself and cleared his throat, trying to sound controlled. I mean, you can stay, he shrugged, if you want. I bit back a smile as I set his overnight bag by his bed. Only if the mighty heir permits. Daniel puffed out his chest. Permission granted. He tugged off the rest of his ceremonial clothes with clumsy hands and a heroic level of effort, occasionally getting stuck in a sleeve or tripping over the slacks around his ankles. Every time I reached forward to help, he'd shoo me away, only to ask for help 10 seconds later. When he was finally in soft cotton pajamas, he flopped onto the bed dramatically. I'm exhausted, he moaned into his pillow. Ceremonies take forever. I sat beside him, smoothing back a curl stuck to his forehead. You did wonderfully. He rolled onto his back, staring at the ceiling. Mom? Yes, baby? His voice dropped to a whisper. Did you see me? At the end? When I reached the end of the path? My heart pulled tight. Of course I did. No one could take their eyes off you. I felt like he paused, trying to put something complex into small 10-year-old words. Like something changed, like something woke up inside me. That's part of it, I murmured. Part of becoming heir. But it didn't feel scary, he said, eyes drifting shut, lashes casting soft shadows on his cheeks. It felt like like I was becoming who I'm supposed to be, even if I'm not there yet. I cupped his cheek gently. That's exactly what it means. Daniel opened his eyes again, slowly lifting his head off the pillow to meet my gaze. And when you put your hand on my head during Dad's wolf blessing, I don't know, it felt like... His small fingers tapped his chest, like you were inside me, like you were keeping me safe even from the inside. Emotion clogged my throat. That's what a mother does. Daniel pushed up suddenly, sitting cross-legged. Mom? Yes? Can I ask you something? Always. He hesitated. Why did Ashar come to you like that? That wasn't like we practiced. My breath caught. I swallowed slowly. I'm not sure why. I guess your dad just wanted me to be part of the ritual. Daniel studied me quietly, his dark eyes piercing as intensely as Kieran's. Finally, he nodded, letting it go. I let out the breath I'd been holding. A comfortable silence settled over us then. I brushed my thumb over the back of his hand. I needed to do this now, before I lost my courage. Danny, there's something I want to talk to you about. He turned to look at me fully, attentive the way he always was when he sensed something important. I'm going to be traveling soon. His brows shot up. Where? I'm not sure yet, I admitted. I just know I need to go, for myself, to grow, to figure things out. A second passed, then another. Daniel looked down, playing with the edge of his blanket. Will you be gone long? I shook my head and pulled him close, clinging to his warmth. I could never be separated from you for long. I promise I'll be back soon before Christmas. Yeah, that seemed like enough time to get my head straight. Daniel exhaled. But you know you don't need my permission. My breath hitched. I know, baby. I didn't want you to feel like I was running away. He shook his head. You're my mom. I know you would never run from me. The sting behind my eyes sharpened. Yes, baby. Never forget that. I'll miss you, he whispered, leaning into me. So much. I wrapped him tightly in my arms. I'll miss you too, my love. But, he sniffed, I want you to go. I froze. You do? He nodded, burying his face in my shoulder. You're always taking care of me and Dad and everyone. He pulled back, wiping his eyes with the heel of his palm, and looked at me with renewed conviction. Go take care of you, and then come back to me. A sob climbed up my throat, threatening to break loose. I kissed his forehead instead. Thank you, I whispered. You have no idea what that means to me. We held each other for a long moment, but eventually, Daniel's yawns grew too big to suppress. I tucked him into bed, gently pulling the blanket up to his chin. As his eyes fluttered, he reached out and grabbed my fingers one last time, briefly squeezing them before letting his grip go slack and surrendering to sleep. Good night, little Alpha, I whispered, placing one last kiss on his temple. When I stepped out into the hallway, the door clicking shut behind me, my chest was tight and aching, but lighter. I took one step and froze. Kieran stood directly outside the door, hands shoved into his pockets, shoulders tight, eyes dark and unreadable. Right on cue, the bond thrashed so sharply it felt like someone had reached inside my chest and twisted. Kieran, I exhaled. Sarah. He took a small step forward. I just wanted to say what Ashar did, what happened earlier. He sighed. I'm sorry. I shook my head. The motion felt choppy. You don't have to apologize. Yes, I do, he said softly. I told him to hold back. I told him tonight wasn't about us. But when he saw you, Kieran's eyes flickered with something raw. He didn't want to hurt the ceremony. He just needed to be near you. The bond shivered. So did I. I didn't have words, so I just nodded, hoping that was that. His jaw flexed. I was hoping you would stay tonight, here with Daniel. And me. He didn't add that, but I heard it loud and clear in the desperate hope in his eyes. My throat tightened. I can't. Sarah, Kieran. My voice cracked in a way that betrayed too much. I hated how close he was, hated how my pulse tripped, hated how the heat of him seeped into my skin without even touching me. It's been a long day. I'm completely drained. I just want to go home. Something shattered in his eyes even as his expression shuddered, like glass breaking behind a closed door. Sarah. His hand twitched at his side, fingers curling slightly, as though he wanted to reach for me. But he stopped himself, forcing his arm to remain still. I stepped around him, heart clawing at my ribs, the bond pulling so tightly it felt like walking against gravity. As I passed him, his voice followed me. I'll wait, he said softly, however long it takes. The bond quaked. I didn't answer. Couldn't. I made it down the stairs and out into the cool night air. Every step a fight, every breath a battle. Serafina's Pove. The night air clung cool and soft against my skin as I stepped out of the pack house, finally, blissfully, alone. This was the first quiet moment I'd had all day. I should have felt relief. Instead, the bond throbbed beneath my skin like a bruise touched too many times. The lightness from being with Daniel vanished after my brief encounter with Kieran. My feet were heavy, my head was full, and my chest was too tight to contain everything inside it. The torches along the walkway flickered low, casting deep shadows over the stone path. Most of the wolves had dispersed. Only a few lingering sentinels patrolled the perimeter, almost invisible. My fingers fumbled for my keys inside my bag as I walked toward the parking courtyard on the east side of the estate. Then a low voice broke the silence. "Sarah," I turned sharply. Lucien was leaning against a stone pillar near the entrance, arms folded, silhouette cut sharp by moonlight. A surprised breath escaped me. "Lucien, you're still here?" He gave a slow nod, pushing off the pillar with fluid ease. I stayed a respectful distance from the ceremony so that I wouldn't intrude, but I didn't want to leave without a chance to talk to you properly. There was something careful in his tone, almost cautious. I swallowed. "Right. I thought you might want some company walking out," he said simply. "It's been a long day, for you especially." He fell into step beside me without asking, and I didn't mind. It was typical Lucien, quietly present, never barging, never demanding. We walked a few moments in silence, the night stretching wide around us. He broke it first. "Daniel was extraordinary tonight." My lips lifted automatically. He really was. The way he walked the path, the way he carried himself, Lucien exhaled with a small, awed laugh. "He's going to become a remarkable alpha." "The greatest one yet," I acknowledged proudly. Lucien glanced sideways at me. "And that's because of you." I blinked. "Me? Yes, you." His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. "Your son's strength doesn't come from the blessings or the rituals or the title. It comes from the way you've raised him, from the kind of mother you are." I knew I was a good mother. I didn't need anyone to affirm that. Still, his compliment hit a lot deeper than I expected. My throat tightened. I just did what any mother would have done. Lucien slowed his steps, turning his head enough that his eyes met mine, dark, steady, unblinking. "No," he said quietly. "Not every mother could do what you've done for Daniel. Not every mother would." My heart clenched, because immediately, reflexively, my mind conjured Margaret, the neglect, the silence, the distance I'd spent my whole life trying to understand. Sometimes the more I loved Daniel, the more I realized how little I'd been loved in return. Not truly. Not in the way a child deserved to be. A prophecy, no matter what it claimed, should never have shaped my life. Parental love didn't need to be earned. It was a given. And I wasn't given. That truth still burned. Lucien must have felt something shift in me, because his expression softened. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I shouldn't have brought it up, and I shouldn't have pushed you before, to question your family, to confront them. That was too forward of me." "It's okay," I said, though something twisted in my chest. If the truth is going to be cruel, I'd rather face it now than live in the dark. His jaw tightened, and an expression flashed across his face that I couldn't read. We reached the edge of the parking courtyard. The lantern-lit stone stretched wide and quiet. The road beyond was empty. The night felt so still, it seemed fragile. I hesitated. I didn't want to leave without saying this. "Lucien," I said softly. He turned fully toward me. "Remember how I said I was going to travel?" He nodded. "Well, I'm leaving sooner than I planned." His shoulders straightened slightly. "I see." His throat bobbed. "Do you know how long you'll be gone?" "I don't know." I wrapped my arms around myself. "I guess I'll know once I go." Lucien stared at me with an intensity that almost made me step back. I forced myself to hold his gaze. "And before I go, I don't want to hide anything from you." He went still. I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "It's been confirmed. Kieran and I, we're fated mates." Silence cracked open between us like ice fracturing underfoot. Lucien didn't move for a long moment, not a muscle, not a breath. The moonlight caught in his eyes, turning them colder, sharper, but beneath that surface stillness, something flickered, raw and wounded. "That doesn't mean I've accepted anything," I added quickly, forcing my voice steady. "Not the bond, not the relationship, not us. My throat tightened. But I haven't rejected it either. Lucian exhaled, a shuddering, pained sound like he'd been slammed in the ribs. I see. I rubbed my arms, pulse racing. You're probably frustrated. You probably feel like I've been dragging things out and stringing you along, and I'm so sorry for that. But I don't want to make decisions based on pressure or fate or the past or proximity. I dragged my teeth over my bottom lip. So while I'm gone, I'm going to think, really think, about everything, about you, about him, about who I want to be with. Lucian's jaw flexed. And when I come back, I whispered, I'll give you a final answer. He didn't respond immediately, just stood there, barely breathing, with that unreadable emotion on his face. When he finally did, his voice was so soft it almost wasn't there. Thank you, he said, for telling me, for trusting me with the truth. And then, more tightly, as I've always said, I will respect and support your choice, Sarah. But there was something off in his voice, something that made my skin prickle. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but he stepped back, gesturing toward my car. You should go, he murmured. It's late, and you're exhausted. Lucian, go, he repeated gently. It's all right. I swallowed and nodded. Good night, I whispered. He offered a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. Good night, Sarah. Have a safe trip. I turned away and made my way to my car, unlocking it with trembling hands. As I slid into the driver's seat, I could still feel his gaze, heavy, unwavering, unbearably silent. The engine rumbled to life, headlights sweeping across the courtyard. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Lucian exactly where I'd left him, motionless, watching me as if every foot of distance carved something new into him. Then I drove away. And the bond wasn't the only thing twisting inside me. Lucian's POV. I stood there like an idiot, rooted, frozen, gutted, as Sarah's taillights disappeared into the dark stretch of the Nightfang Road. Respect her choice, support her choice. I'd said the words, I meant them. But gods, it was harder than anything I'd trained for. As she drove out of sight, a freezing hollow ache plunged straight through my chest, heavy as lead. Something foreign yet instinctive whispered through me. She's leaving. She might not return the same. She might not return to you at all. The thought carved me like a blade, cruel and merciless. I had told her I would respect her choice. I would. I'd also promised myself I wouldn't lose her. I wouldn't. But standing there, watching her vanish into the night, I felt the earlier doubt twist. It coiled violently into something far more troubling. Insecurity. For the first time since meeting Seraphina Blackthorne, I didn't know where I stood. Kieran's POV. 2 days after Daniel's heir ceremony, Gavin walked into my office in the pack house, leaned against the door jamb, and just stared at me. I paused mid-sentence over the logistics report I'd been reviewing, border rotation schedules, revised security protocols after a rogue sighting near Topanga, and a stack of Alliance correspondence I'd been meaning to answer. Numbers and obligations blurred together, but none of it was unusual. What was unusual was my beta looking at me like he was waiting for a bomb to go off. I closed my laptop halfway. Can I help you? Gavin folded his arms, still assessing me like I was a malfunctioning explosive device. I'm just wondering if this building, sturdy as it is, can withstand the force of you receiving the information I have to pass. My brows pulled together. What are you talking about? He didn't answer, just stepped forward and set something on my desk. A printed flight confirmation. My heart dropped. My pulse went tight and sharp, a rope snapping inside my chest. Gavin exhaled slowly. I figured you'd want to. I was out of my chair before he finished the sentence. At the rate and frequency with which I regularly tore through the streets of LA like a madman, it was a wonder my car and plate number weren't plastered over every news outlet as a public menace. Ashar paced viciously under my skin as I drove, claws dragging against my ribs, every instinct screaming, "Go! Find her! Stop her!" Traffic blurred around me, LA sunlight flashing in ragged streaks across the windshield. I barely paused to switch off the engine when I screeched into Sarah's driveway. "Go! Stop her!" I didn't bother knocking. The door wasn't locked anyway. I stepped inside and froze. The living room was empty, still, a hollow, aching quiet that slammed into my chest like a fist. For one sickening moment, the ground slipped out from under me. She was gone. She already left. I was too late. My pulse spiked, panic flooding so fast I nearly lost control, until I heard it. Footsteps, soft, steady movement, a faint rustle, the scrape of a zipper, the muted thump of something being set on a bed. Upstairs, relief buckled my knees, almost sent me to the floor. I took the stairs 2 at a time, following the sounds down the hallway until a bedroom door came into view. It was slightly ajar, light spilling through the crack, a warm sliver cutting across the floor. I pushed it open, and there she was. Sarah stood in the middle of her room, a half-open suitcase on the bed, folded clothes arranged with her usual neatness. Another bag waited on the floor, already zipped. My stomach bottomed out. I was going to be fucking sick right there in her doorway. Sarah glanced up at my unceremonious intrusion and rolled her eyes. She didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, she looked like she'd been expecting me. "Gavin warned me you were blazing your way here," she sighed, folding a shirt into her suitcase. Then she pointed a finger at me, her scolding tone like a schoolteacher's. "I haven't been attacked in months. Turn off whatever surveillance bullshit you have on me." The calmness in her voice, the casual, almost effortless way she spoke, was at complete odds with the fact that every shirt she folded, every item she tucked into that damn suitcase, felt like she was peeling off a piece of my heart. And that indifference terrified me far more than her anger ever had. "What, fuck, I couldn't breathe, is this?" Sarah didn't stop folding a sweater. "What does it look like?" "You're leaving." The words scraped out of me. Yes. That calm again, like still water hiding a deadly drop underneath. I stepped forward before I knew I was moving. "Why didn't you tell me?" She lifted her gaze to mine, steady, detached. "You would have been informed eventually. After all, Daniel will be staying with you while I'm gone." Gone. The word hit harder than a punch. "Sarah." I swallowed, trying to form coherent words around the rising passion through me. "Are you doing this to avoid the bond? Is that what this is?" There, so minute I would have missed it if my gaze wasn't fixed on her. A tiny flicker of emotion, vulnerability. Then she blinked, and the indifferent mask slipped on again. "This has nothing to do with avoiding anything." She turned back to her suitcase, grabbed a folded skirt, and began refolding it. "This is my decision, my choice, and as my ex-husband, you have no right to interfere with it." Ex-husband. The word lodged itself in my ribs like a blade. I shook my head. "No right? Sarah, even if that's true, it is true. What about as Daniel's father?" My voice sharpened. "His heir ceremony just ended. If you leave right now, how do you think it will look to everyone else? What do you think they'll say?" Again, another flicker of emotion. Her eyes lowered, lashes trembling faintly. "I've thought about that," she murmured. "I worried about it." "Then don't go," I said, stepping closer. She exhaled. "But after thinking seriously, I realized this might actually be best for Daniel." I stared at her, unable to process that. "How the hell is you leaving good for him?" "Because he's stepping into a new phase of his life," she said gently. "Before the weight of those responsibilities builds, I want to fix what's wrong with me, my wolf. Everything. I can't help him the way I want to if I'm still trapped like this." My throat tightened. Her wolf. If not for the day she demanded to speak to Ashar, I wouldn't have even known that she'd begun to hear the voice of her wolf. Another aspect of her life I'd lost the privilege to. "Sarah." I stepped forward, and my heart clenched when she stiffened. "You don't have to run away to fix that." "I'm not running away." She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since I walked in. "I'm doing what I should have done years ago, and Daniel understands. He said he'd be okay." My heart clenched again. Of course Daniel said that. He would never do anything to stand in the way of his mother's happiness. If only I'd been half as strong and supportive as he was. Still, knowing Daniel was aware of Sarah's journey and was okay with it, loosened some of the panic in my chest, but only barely. I stepped closer again, slow this time, palms open. "Sarah, have you considered that maybe you don't need to go so far? It's risky. We can try other ways, safer ways, together. Let me help you." I reached up, intending only to brush a stray strand of hair from her cheek. She stepped back, so quickly she almost tripped on a stray shoe. My hand fell uselessly between us. "Don't," she said quietly. The tremor in her voice betrayed her even as she struggled to keep her expression neutral. "Don't try to manipulate me with the mate bond." I stared at her, my eyes widening. Manipulate you? My voice broke into a disbelieving laugh. What the hell are you talking about? Her eyes narrowed and her throat bobbed. You know what I'm talking about. I can't fucking think straight every time you... She swallowed hard and looked away. Just leave, Kieran. Sarah, if I wanted to control you with the mate bond, you'd already bear my mark. Silence slammed between us. Her eyes widened slightly, uncertainty and something raw flickering beneath it. My chest heaved. I've held back. Again and again. I faltered sometimes. It's so fucking hard. But I reined myself in. Because I didn't want to push you. I didn't want to cross a line after everything I've done. I've respected every boundary you set for me because I know I messed up in the past. I know exactly what I cost you. Ashar snarled under my skin, furious, desperate. But now, I whispered, now you're leaving, running further than ever, away from me, away from this bond, away from what we are. A crack formed in my composure. How do you expect me to accept that? Sarah parted her lips, but I didn't let her answer. I stepped forward, one decisive stride, and she retreated until her back hit the wall beside the bed. Her breath stuttered as my presence folded over her instinctively. Dominant, overwhelming. I braced my arm beside her head, my body caging hers in without touching. Kieran, she whispered. Her pulse leapt at her throat. I bowed my head slightly, drinking in her scent, her warmth, the tremble in her breath. My voice slid out low and rough. You're mine, Serafina. Her eyes flashed, longing and defiance tangled together. I will tolerate a lot of things. Your anger, your wrath, your hatred. But I will not tolerate you running from me. Her breath hitched. You don't get to decide what I do with my life. I don't give a fuck about what you tolerate. You can hate me, I said softly. You can fight me. You can yell, push, argue. I'll take it all, but I'm not letting you disappear without understanding exactly what you're walking away from. What are you? I didn't let her finish. I cupped her jaw, fingers firm but gentle, and slammed my mouth to hers. Maya had gone through the 5 stages of grief when I told her I was leaving. Denial. Absolutely not. You're not leaving me again. Life is so fucking boring without you. Anger. I blame Kieran. I blame your fucking family. I blame you, damn it. Bargaining. Okay, can I come with you? I know it's about self-discovery, but what if I don't make a peep? You won't even know I'm there. Depression. How am I supposed to survive without you? I'll die before you return, Sarah. Die. Acceptance. Fine. Go. Can I at least throw you a send-off party? I'd broken her heart by refusing. I didn't want to drag things out, and I didn't want to bear the strange, aching weight of goodbyes. The morning I set off was disarmingly peaceful. Soft LA sunlight filtered through the curtains in warm ribbons, catching the dust motes floating lazily in the air. The house was still, quiet enough that I could hear my own heartbeat, a steady, determined rhythm reminding me this was really happening. My suitcase sat by the front door, neatly packed. Inside were small pieces of everyone who cared about me. Maya had slipped in an entire anti-anxiety travel kit, including more good luck charm moonstones, herbal mints, a ridiculous lavender-scented neck pillow shaped like a llama for some reason, and a handwritten note that said, if you make a new best friend, I'll astral project myself to smack you. Daniel had once again given me Wolfie. He didn't make a big deal out of it, just shoved the plush into my hands the night before and muttered, so you don't get lonely. He'd also made me a small compass out of scraps he must have found in Nightfang's workshop. It wasn't pretty, but the needle worked, and he'd tested it at least a dozen times before giving it to me. So you always find your way back, he said, forcing a brave face that didn't match his worried eyes. Lucian had been vague during our goodbye, saying his gift couldn't go through airport security and would be waiting for me when I got to my destination. As for Kieran, well, his concession was gift enough. With those and Alina's steady warmth inside me, I felt prepared. Well, as prepared as I could be. The flight to Seattle was uneventful, the sky outside the window shifting from LA's golden warmth to the muted, rain-washed grays of the Pacific Northwest. By the time the plane descended, the world below was a watercolor of mist-shrouded evergreens, glass buildings streaked with drizzle, and streets glistening like polished stone. The air that greeted me when I stepped out of the terminal was cool and damp, carrying the scent of pine and ocean salt, so different from LA's dry sun and smog-tinged heat. The taxi ride downtown wound through narrow streets lined with cozy cafes, indie bookstores, and people bundled in layers despite it being barely autumn. The clouds hung low, as if the sky were brushing the tops of the buildings, and everything felt softer, quieter, more introspective. When I arrived at the little street corner cafe we'd agreed on, Elaine was already there, fidgeting with a bouquet that was far too extravagant for a casual welcome. She spotted me instantly. "Serafina!" she squealed, nearly knocking over her own latte as she stood. I laughed and hugged her tightly. My editor and I had spoken hundreds of times over video calls, exchanged countless drafts, fought over deadlines, cried over character deaths, and swooned over happily ever afters. But meeting her in person felt surreal. She was shorter than I'd imagined, brighter, a little fidgety, even though she tried to act composed. "I'm so happy you made it," she said breathlessly. "Oh, these are for you. And here, this is from the team. And this is, right, careful, it's heavy." She piled gift after gift into my arms, a stack of customized journals, a custom fountain pen, a hand-knit scarf, fancy chocolates that smelled too rich even through the packaging. "You didn't have to bring all this," I protested. She waved a hand dramatically. "You're my best-selling author. You're a major source of my Christmas bonus." I snorted. Fair enough. The rest of the morning was a whirlwind of her excited rambling and my attempts not to get overwhelmed. Elaine was, in many ways, everything I admired about humans. Vibrant, expressive, unapologetically sentimental. Her emotions lived on the surface of her skin, bright and fleeting yet sincere. She walked me through Pike Place Market, where the smell of fish and roasted coffee mingled in a way that was both strange and relaxing. We tried samples of local pastries, watched a man carve tiny soap sculptures, and took photos by the harbor, even though I usually hated posing. By noon, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. We passed a bookstore on our way to the art district. I stopped in my tracks. My latest novel, Moonlit Pact, was still displayed in the front window, 3 copies stacked neatly beneath a handwritten recommendation card. 2 customers stood beside it, flipping through the pages. One woman murmured, "I swear her stories always give me this weird emotional boost." The other nodded. "Right? Like they make me feel seen." Elaine grinned at me. If I told them the author was standing right there, they'd faint. I sputtered. "Do not. Oh, trust me, I won't. I have no interest in being trampled to death by your fan base." We shared a laugh, but inside, something warm and steady settled in my chest. This, writing, creating worlds, guiding strangers through emotions I had once drowned in, was mine. One of the few things in my life that I had chosen for myself. Outside of expectations and pack politics and mate bonds, for dinner, Elaine insisted on taking me to an avant-garde restaurant that looked more like a gallery than a place where people ate. Each table was shaped differently. The lighting changed colors depending on where you stood. The menu was on a screen embedded in the table with animated illustrations. Every dish looked like modern art and tasted like something an eccentric chef made on a dare. But it was amazing. Humans around us laughed too loudly, flirted boldly, argued passionately about politics and poetry and whatever else mattered in their brief, blazing lives. Their emotions weren't subtle. They weren't hidden. They weren't bound by instinct or hierarchy. They were simply existing, freely. And I felt that freedom brushing against my skin too, almost as if I could absorb some of it by sheer proximity. "This city's been weird lately," Elaine said casually during a lull in conversation, spearing a piece of neon green something. "There've been a few animal attacks, or what the news is calling animal attacks." A prickle crawled up my spine. "What kind?" I asked carefully. "Oh, vague descriptions, half-eaten carcasses, footprints nobody can identify, the usual Pacific Northwest horror movie fuel." She shrugged. "Most of it is bullshit fear-mongering if you ask me, but just be careful walking around alone, okay?" "I will," I promised. But the unease in my gut didn't fade. I tried to push it aside, ignore it. I needed, to believe this chapter of my life wouldn't immediately spiral into chaos. It was near midnight when I walked back toward my hotel, the city lights painting the wet pavement in shimmering reflections. My breath puffed in the cool air, misty and soft. I took a shortcut through an alley flanked by brick walls and fire escapes. Probably not smart after Elaine's warning, but I knew how to take care of myself. Nothing nearby smelled threatening. Or so I thought. Halfway through the alley, a low, desperate whimper echoed behind a dumpster. I froze. Another sound followed. Boot steps, several pairs, moving fast. Then voices. Grab him. Hold him down. Careful, he's twitching again. I peered around the corner. 4 men dressed head to toe in black tactical gear were restraining a figure on the ground. A thin, scruffy male whose clothes hung off him like wilted rags. His hair was matted, his skin bruised and pale, but the scent... My breath hitched. Werewolf. Omega. One of the men kicked him in the ribs when he tried to crawl away. Another produced a syringe filled with a shimmering silver liquid. The third man, most likely the leader, spoke in a clipped, cold tone. Keep him still. We need the specimen alive. Specimen. The word slammed into me like physical force. What the fuck had I stumbled upon?